Alright, hey everybody, this is my intro or overview into Post Scriptum. I'm gonna go over the basics of the game and try and give you a good idea of what it is and whether or not you should be playing or we should be playing. In the case of Dancom Delta, that I'm definitely going to be posting this for. It is a World War II game, of course, set almost entirely around Operation Market Garden. So you play as either the British or the Germans, of course. First things first, here are the video game specs, or computer specs. Make sure you have them. I'm going to hold here for a moment. Alright, make sure you've got that. I've heard that other people are having video or performance issues. I personally haven't had any. But keep that in mind. Okay, so you might want to play a tutorial, but there's no tutorial. Yeah, even this training camp is just a list of servers, most of which will have a password on them, and they are incredibly small. So your best bet is to learn while you play. Getting started opens up a web page to their wiki, which is kind of helpful, I guess. I mean, it tells you what you can get, not what you will have, but what you can have. I'll be going into more detail about that later. Let's see. Play online. There's only an online mode. There's no single player campaign. So you've got a server list. It's very basic. As far as I know, you can't favorite with these stars. And let's see. Over here you'll get all the information you probably need. Not all of the maps currently have pictures for whatever reason, because they just released like 2 days ago. You can run your own server if you want. They've got like a server software package on their website, I think. So you can run your own server and tweak everything. That will be the last of this pre-recorded or recorded while this is open. Everything else past this point will be me talking with some background footage that I captured earlier. Technically during the beta, but it was during the entire month where they were only focused on performance upgrades, so very little gameplay-wise should have changed. Hey everybody, this is Silver Red. I'm just going to talk about the infantry section here for a bit, but before I do, I want to remind you that a mic is required for the game. You will get so much hate for not having a mic. But moving on, you will not be able to customize your loadout in any way. There are a couple of classes that kind of resemble the classes in Battlefield, but generally a section is made up of a squad leader, 3 unique classes, 2 medics, and 3 bog standard riflemen. The 3 unique classes could be anything from having a Panzerschreck if you are on the German side, or a Piet if you're on the English side, to having a machine gun. It could also be having rifle grenades or a light mortar. You cannot have all of what I just listed. which means that those 3 bog standard riflemen generally have a, I wouldn't say less interesting time, but they're usually less required. You will always need those 2 medics though. If one medic leaves or disconnects, somebody else should immediately jump into the position. 1, because it's more fun, and 2, you will get a lot more kudos and thank you from everybody around you simply by poking them in the leg with a needle. Squad leaders will be able to hear squad leader voice comms or command voice comms, which they'll be able to use to talk to all the squad leaders, whether they're an infantry section, a logistics section, or an armored section, as well as the commander of the map, who can call down artillery, planes, stuff like that.
Looks like
you can use this to coordinate if there's no commander or the commander doesn't command. So that means if you really need mortars, you can ask the Logi team, or the logistics section, usually just called Logi, for a specific set of mortars at a location by marking it on your map. Speaking of voice comms, you press by default V for local chat, allowing you to talk to everybody around you, depending on how far away they are from you. So if you're playing the game, you may run around and see somebody's name pop up in blue in the bottom left of your screen, but not hear anything. That's because they're talking and they're too far away from you. Squad voice chat by default is B on the keyboard, and that allows you to talk to everybody in your squad or section, even if they're halfway across the map. Map objectives are generally your standard capture the flag like you would see in Call of Duty or Battlefield. Just get enough people on the point, watch the flag change to white, and then your flag take its place. Squad members who are in vehicles do not count towards capturing a point, which means your armored section can't really help you in taking the point. It has to be the infantry. Alright, that wraps up the infantry section, as well as the, ironically, infantry section of this video. Next up will be the logistics section. Alright, on to the logistics section. The logistics section, from the name, sounds more boring than it actually is. You are the engineer squad, the guys who build defenses, create obstacles, mine roads. They're the guys who are behind the scene, and the game cannot proceed without them. They're the ones who can put down ammo boxes, as well as repair stations for the armored section, and as attacker they can build forward operating bases, which are basically forward spawn points. They are also the ones who are able to build heavy mortars as well as tripod-mounted machine guns. A good logistics section can be the difference between a victory and a defeat, and they are not just limited to defense. You can go behind enemy lines and start building up tank traps and barbed wire to get in their way and slow them from reinforcing the point that the infantry sections are trying to take. And if you're the victim of a offensive logistic team that has just blocked off one of the few bridges to the front, your logistics section is the only one with an explosive to get rid of any enemy obstacles. And on some special maps, they're the only ones who are able to build that bridge in the first place. To kind of wrap things up, the logistics section is a small 4-man group that has a bigger impact than their size would imply. Alright, we're on to the armored section, my personal favorite. The armored section is a section of 4 people, kind of like the logistics. Its squad members are only armed with a pistol, a wrench, and a canteen. They are also the only squad that is able to operate armored cars and anything heavier than that. That includes tanks. The armored section is everything from heavy tank support using a Panther or Churchill to armored recon using one of the many armored cars that are available to both the Germans and the British. A good armored section is one that communicates within itself as well as to command and with local infantry. The guy running up to you and saying, "Hey, there's a tiger right behind that barn," is a lot more useful than you would think. Tank crew members can open up the hatch and poke their head up out of the tank, but they will expose themselves to being shot at that point. The view from inside the tank is very, very limited. You have usually a tiny little box that you can see through, and you can move your head around inside the tank to kind of peek out the window at different angles, but otherwise your spatial awareness is 0. This means that while there are some positions in various vehicles which are less immediately fun, all are important. The 4 positions in a vehicle usually are driver, gunner, commander, and full machine gunner. Some vehicles have less than 4 positions. Some cars only have the driver and the gunner. Not all members of an armored section need to be in the same vehicle. So that means you can have 2 people in one car and 2 people in another car and really cause some havoc behind enemy lines. Armored vehicles in Post Scriptum are all different in subtle ways, and they try to be historically accurate. The differences can be as simple as the driver has a little porthole to look through instead of a periscope, to this tank has armored skirts on it, and so you can't actually see out of that other window on your left. There are, of course, a few other big differences, such as a small tank driving different from a large tank, and some tanks not having any turret at all. But to kind of wrap up the armored section overview, generally I have found the armored section to be a fun section to be in. However, it can quickly get frustrating and aggravating depending on how well you are communicating with the rest of your section and how well everybody else is communicating with you. Hey everybody, just checking in on this last little bit to kind of sign off. This project took a lot longer than I thought it would to get everything wrapped up. But that does mean I can give you a little bit of update on what happened since the beginning of August to halfway through September. The armored map mode is confirmed. They're currently working on it, and they're working on the American 101st Airborne as a playable faction. Let's see. They got rid of one thing that I didn't mention, and I didn't mention it because I knew they might get rid of it. One of the spawn mechanics is squad leaders can have a radio man next to them, and they can do a recall, and everybody can spawn on that squad leader so long as he stays out of combat and the radio man stays near them and neither of them die. Previously it was a truck that could drive around complete with 2 or 1.5 squads and just park somewhere and you can spawn there. It had undermined the FOB system that the engineers could make, as well as making it really easy to quickly get ahead of the defenders on certain maps and essentially just take the second or third point right out from under them as soon as they lost the one before that. But yeah, kind of excited for the 101st, just a little. Not entirely sure how they're going to do it, because as far as I know, the 101st didn't use bolt-action rifles. They used like really light carbines, but no bolt action that I'm aware of. And I haven't done a whole lot of research into the 101st. Just gotta say. Um, One of the things they also did was recently they've given, at least for the Germans, the Sapper and the Radio Man the semi-automatic rifles. So that kind of improves things because it gives you a little bit more reason to play those classes. The Sapper was basically useless before, and now it's slightly more useful. I also kind of want to apologize for the footage of the tank, for the tank portion. I would always have great matches with tanks whenever I was not recording, and every time I tried to record a match where I was in the tank section, it would always end up dry, or every time we'd get to the battle we'd die, and then it would be another like 7-minute drive to the front lines. So eventually I found a server that was underpopulated, asked the admins, hey, I need some tank footage for a video, do you mind if I drive around the spawn? And they said yes, and that's what I used. Hopefully you'll see a lot more of my content on Post Scriptum, though it might be a bit difficult. The matches are very long, and I don't really like to hop in the middle of one or leave halfway through. But yeah, that should be it. I'll see you later. Cheers.